It's your moment. Time for your epic bass fill. But you have no idea what the to play.
Coming up with bass fills doesn't have to be that hard. A fill is just some cool transition notes, not this. I'm going to show you a simple 3-step process to come up with solid fills without the panic, even if you don't have shredder chops or a ton of theory. We start with rhythm, because even if the notes you play are garbage, if you sell the rhythm, it'll still kind of work. There are 3 aspects of fill rhythm to think about. First, where does your bass fill go in the music? Fills usually go at the ends of things, like at the end of a 4-bar phrase, or at the end of a section, like a verse going into a chorus.
She knows she filled and knows how to please. Show enough to knock a strong man to his knees. Cause she's a
Then, how much space do you want to fill up? Fills usually last for 2 beats or 4 beats. In this video, we're going to stick to 2-beat fills. And then last, you pick a rhythm to fill those beats with. And if that's tricky for you, just start super simple with 2 quarter notes or 8/8 quarter or 4/8 notes, something like that. Let me demonstrate that for you. Don't worry about what notes I'm playing for now. I'll just fill on a 2-bar phrase instead of a full 4 bars to kind of save you some time. So here I go, I'm just playing my sample bass line. Here come my 2 beats. I'll just play 2 quarter notes. Quarter, quarter. And now I'll try 8/8 quarter. And I'll try 4/8 notes. There are lots of ways to come up with more complex fill rhythms. One way is to imagine what a drum fill might sound like and then just copy that rhythm. Like, I really like big 80s fills. Get out of here, Phil. Not that kind of fill. So I might imagine something like reggae, good, good, good. And then I would just copy that rhythm and plug in some notes like this. Here comes my spot. Reggae, good, good, good. Or I can play some different notes, same rhythm. Reggae, good, good, good. But Josh, how do you know what notes to play? Relax, Noob Josh. You're always freaking out on me, you know? Obviously, I'm gonna tell you how to figure out what notes to play. Sorry, it's just how I roll. There are lots of ways you could pick notes for a bass fill or a bass line. The easiest way that requires the least theory is using shapes. I talk about this in detail in my bass shapes video, which you should check out if you haven't already, but I'll cover some different shapes in this video. First up is a shape you can use on both major and minor chords, so if you don't know what kind of chord you're hearing, this shape is your friend. It's called root 5th octave, and it looks like this. Okay, I'm not gonna do this all in rhythm. If you took my Beginner to Badass course over at bassbuzz.com, you know this shape very well. This is probably the most common shape for bass fills and bass lines in general. To use this shape or any other shape for a bass fill, you just need to find your root note, which is the core note of whatever bass line you were just playing, and stick on the shape. Here's how to do that. If you're playing on a chord progression like this, which is just a sequence of chords, and we'll really do this together in a minute, but we have 1 bar of G major, 1 bar of E minor, and then 2 bars of D major. Fills typically come in at the end of the chord progression and lead or fill back into the start of the progression. In this case, that happens on the D major chord. So D is your root, and then you'll add the 5th and the octave, and there's your shape. That's not the only way to plan which notes you're going to use for your fills, but it's pretty foolproof. So once you pick a shape, think back to the rhythm you picked. Let's say we picked 8/8 quarter. So that means we have 3 slots we need to fill with notes, right? 1 for each hit of the rhythm, 8/8 quarter. Then you just try stuff out, picking notes from your shape. You could try root 5th octave, you could try octave 5th root, or octave 5th 5th. You don't have to use every note of the shape every time. So let me quickly demo what that would sound like for you. Again, I'll just loop 2 bars instead of 4 to save you some listening time, starting with root 5th octave. Let's play a sample bass line. Here's the fill. Now I'll try octave 5th root, fifth octave is a great all-around shape that I recommend starting with for simplicity, but let's say you're a little more advanced and you do know whether your guitar or keyboard player is playing a major chord or a minor chord. I'm going to show you an easy 3-note triangle shape that you can use on either one. You just move it around a little differently. If you're on a major chord, you can play with this shape. It gives you some nice Motowny sounds, and there's plenty of room for rock and blues and pop and funk stuff too. So your root note is the top note, the highest sounding note of the shape, and the flavor notes fall below it. So if you know that your root note for the fill is D, you just find a D and then stick the rest of the triangle on below. You might recognize those flavor notes as coming from the D major scale, but don't worry about that. You can just memorize the triangle shape and try it out by ear if you're allergic to music theory. Achoo! Please don't talk about scales near me, I have a condition. If you're on a minor chord, you can use the same shape, but your root will now be the middle note at the far end of the triangle. This gives you some nice, safe minor sounds to try out. So again, if I'm coming from a D chord, D is my root note, and then my 2 flavor notes go here, one below on a C and one above, which will be on an F in this case. Those flavor notes come from the D minor scale, but again, you can skip the theory and just memorize the shape for now. Josh, aren't you gonna tell the viewer to click like and subscribe and ring the bell so they get notified about new videos? Nah, I'm sick of people saying that in every YouTube video. Let's just take these shapes and make some dope bass fills. So here's our first play-along track to test some fills out on. We'll just play this super simple bass line. So let's go through the 3 steps so you can come up with some fills. Step 1 is pick a rhythm. I've carved out this 2-beat space for you at the end of the 4-bar phrase so you know where and for how long to fill. Now we need to pick a rhythm to go in that space. Let's try 4 eighth notes, 8, 8, 8, 8. So that'll be 3 and 4 and. Step 2 is pick a shape. Let's try root 5th octave to start with. Maybe you don't know whether this is a major or minor chord. So what will your root note be for the fill? It's gonna be D, right? Because the last chord in the phrase is a D chord. So here's your root, your 5th, and your octave. Step 3 is to stick the rhythm and the shape together and try stuff out. So we just need to come up with 4 notes to fill out our rhythm using the shape. And you can do that in real time, or you can plan it out beforehand if doing it in real time is too hard or overwhelming. So let's try that out together. We'll start with root 5th, octave 5th for the fill, okay? Just jump in wherever with the bass line on the E minor, you go to the D, here comes the fill, root 5th, octave 5th. Nice, let's try another one. How about octave 5th, root, root? Here comes the fill, 1, 2. Nice. And if you're more advanced, you can come up with more complex rhythms than we just tried, which will dial up the intensity a lot. And again, if you want ideas for that, just think about how you think a drum fill might go and imitate that. I'll try one out. If you want to try this out yourself after the lesson without me blabbering, which I highly, highly recommend, you can get the extended jam tracks for free. Just check the link in the description. Real quick, let's try this out with a triangle shape we learned. We'll stick to the 4 eighth note rhythm. So this progression is ending on a D major chord, so we'll want to put the root on top of our triangle shape like this. Any pattern's gonna sound good, but let's try like D, B, A, B as our first fill, okay? So here's the track, jump in whenever. Here we go with D, B, A, B. And again, if you play more complex rhythms, the fills are gonna pop out a lot more. Like I'll try something like that out here. Okay, last thing, let's try out a new chord progression where we can fill on a minor chord. So here's the progression, G minor to E flat major to C minor, and then back to G minor, fill, fill. And we'll keep the same rhythm, 4 eighth notes at the end of the phrase. So what's your root note gonna be for the fill? It's gonna be G, right? Because that's the last chord. And we're gonna use the minor triangle shape since it's a G minor chord. So the root will be here on the far end of the triangle, and then 1 flavor note goes below, which will be on F, and then 1 goes above, which will be a B flat. So for our first fill, let's try like F, G, B flat, F. Okay, here we go with the track. Just jump in when you're ready. E flat, C, get Get ready for the fill. Cool. And then I have lots of choices from here. I can change the note order, I can play a more complex rhythm. I'm just trying stuff out. The next level of bass fill finesse is knowing when to fill and when not to fill. Sometimes there will be a big glorious space in the music for your awesome bass fill. Sometimes there might be another fill in the way.